I have not yet seen a company that is so ready to transform with this technology. And I mean, when I mean a company that has, 30 years behind them of not being a tech company and not being an AI company at all, and now really, really willing to be transforming with these new technologies.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of The Chief AI Officer. Today I'm speaking with Guillaume Laporte, who is Chief AI Officer at Foundever, a global leader in the customer experience industry, creating innovative solutions for 750 plus brands all over the world. Guillaume, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Yeah, I'm excited to, we spoke a bit before the show about a lot of different topics that we can get into today. Before we do that, can you just give our audience a little bit of a personal story of what was kind of your first moment where you realized AI's true potential?
I'd like to name two. So the first one was in 2016 when Facebook, Meta, back in the day, Facebook introduced bots on Facebook Messenger. And with my co-founders, we coded a very simple Python script, and we plugged that to the Messenger API, and then we're able to speak with a machine on Messenger. That was the first kind of wow effect, because we right away thought, okay, that's really cool. It's like a new interface, right? We had computers, phones, and now we have assistants, right, that we can chat and talk with. And then the Alexas and the Siris of the world arrived, etc. So I think that was very interesting, kind of the new platform coming, the glimpse of the new platform. And then the other moment was probably like everybody else when I tried ChatGPT and I asked quite a complex thing, and it came up with a very, very clever answer. And I thought, okay, it's becoming very interesting how these algorithms are capable of understanding and answering, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that moment on Messenger, because I have come from that space as well, and our founders were even there. My previous founders were there, and I think that excited them in the same way. That idea of like this whole new channel, this whole new interface to interact with brands. I mean, you recently joined Foundever, right? It was about 6-7 months ago, I think, that you joined in the position as Chief AI Officer. Obviously, that is a big shift into like a very large global company in the CX space. What's a typical day like for you as Chief AI Officer at Foundever?
The typical day varies very much depending on if I'm traveling or not. We're now post-COVID era, so we're traveling again to see clients, to attending events, and to meeting with teams. If I'm not traveling, my day is mostly filled with calls, meetings with my team, meeting with other teams, meeting with leaders in the company, with clients, with suppliers, startups, vendors. So, basically getting a lot of inputs, but also, spreading a little bit the message of AI and explaining what we're trying to accomplish at Foundever, and then getting alignments across all of those people so that we do efficient work.
Yeah, and I'm curious what that team looks like, right? Because AI touches everything in almost every company, but at a CX company in particular, I imagine it spreads very, very far and wide. What does your team structure look like? How do you interact with startups? How do you interact with established companies? Like, how do you think about delivering innovation in AI at Foundever?
My team is composed of basically two big batch. One batch is basically the technical side. So I've created very similar in a very similar startup setting, basically product squads, right? So a product manager, a product designer, a few developers, and maybe a leader of the squad. And they're tackling individual projects or products, either entirely homegrown or most likely build with third-party solutions, right? So we leverage the big guys, right? Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, for specific use cases, or we work with startups that have a different angle and a better solution that we try to accomplish. So I have about 5-6 of those squads that are tackling each of them one specific product, one specific aspect of the customer service and customer contact center use cases. And then on the other side, the other bucket is more related to how do we improve and educate the company about this topic? Because Foundever being a kind of historically a traditional contact center company with 170,000 employees, picking up the phone, answering chat and emails on behalf of 750 brands. So we have to transform from the inside, right? It's not just a team of about 50, 60 people that can really transform the company. Everybody has to put their grain of salt. And so for this, I've put together a team. I call them AI operations manager. Those are kind of just a nice title, but it encompasses basically a lot of profiles. It could be business people, operations people, marketing people, right? They can come from very different backgrounds. And then we put in place different things to basically turn the company into an AI company. So we change the culture, we educate, we create training programs, we do certifications internally, we scout for talents internally that could be good fit for the future of the company becoming a true AI company or AI CX company, right? So, this team it's a very interesting thing because changing the mind of so many people that have done the same job sometimes for many, many years, maybe decades, is very interesting. It's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, I love the way that you're tackling it with some of that startup mindset, though, of like building out those squads, focusing on projects, like trying to be agile within a large organization. Can you give some more detail on how those squads or those projects work? Do you have a long-term strategic roadmap for the company that breaks down into these different squads? Are you kind of getting requests from people on the ground to integrate new technologies? Like, what does that look like?
So that last part is interesting because it's something that I'm changing a little bit my approach on this part. But if we talk about the squads, they work exactly like any startup squads in the sense that they're given a mandate. So you have to solve a problem, and then they figure out how they think is the best way to approach that problem, either by building a solution entirely ourselves or partnering with a startup and customizing the solution to make it deliverable for our clients and for our operations. Typically, one big use case that we're tackling is the agent co-pilot. So how do you assist the agents in real time with generative AI? How do you make sure that they know what they should answer, or how do you make sure that they save a lot of time when they're typing, they make less mistakes, etc. We wanted to tackle that thing, or how do you enhance agents with AI? So how do you make a co-pilot? And then we looked at different options, right? And we built part of the solution internally because we want to control a little bit how we roll it out, what data are being used, etc. But then we partnered as well with a startup to be able to create the right interface. The interface that we figured could be a good one is a Chrome extension, because nowadays everything happens on the cloud. So the agents are constantly using a browser-based solution, whether it's a telephony system, a messaging system, or CRM, etc. So we wanted to come up with not dedicated applications, but more Chrome extensions that can assist the agents, read what's happening on the screen, search for information, the knowledge base, retrieve, populate text fields automatically, listen to the voice, etc. So we partnered with a third-party startup for that Chrome automation part, right? It's a startup called Pixie Bricks, very interesting startup from New York. And so we have like an enterprise agreement with them, and we work very closely with them. But at the same time, like the logic and the AI part and the data that we use are built on the platform in-house by that squad. So that's just an example of one of those squads. And about the last part of your question, where I'm changing my mind, is how do you manage requests from the ground? So if we have, one team in the Philippines that do a special line of business for a multinational company, and they want to do a specific thing that does not fall into one of those 5 squads. So the products that we're building are not going to solve that problem. So at first, I was more like, focus. We have to focus. 5 things is already a lot. We want to tackle those first, and then we'll take more requests from the ground. But it turns out that a lot of those needs are very short-term needs. They want something right now for maybe this month or this week or this quarter. They don't necessarily want a product or solution. So what we're building now is we're building an AI desk with another squad. And this squad has a different mandate. They're here to solve in the simplest way possible the solutions from the people on the ground. They can pass over to startups that we've scouted and we think are good fit, or they can quickly build a little application, a little algorithm that will serve this team for a month, right? So sometimes it's analyzing CSAT comments and summarizing them so that it's actionable. Because, when you have thousands of CSAT comments, so this is just simple summarizing work. This is something that a lot of vendors out there are already doing really well. Or you can create a very small backend application to process that. So yeah, I'm changing a little bit my position on this, and we're creating this AI desk where people fill a form with their needs. Then we assess it, we prioritize it, and we try to sprint it over 1, 2, 3 weeks, and then move on to the next one. So it's a different logic than the other 5 squads.
Oh, I love that combination though, right? Because it allows you, like you said, to focus on kind of long-term strategic initiatives, building out those products that might have transformational potential while still serving, the needs of your customers, right? Which might be the different business units within the company, and, making them feel heard, I guess, and adopting AI as well, which sounds like it's a big part of your mandate within the company. One thing you mentioned I'd love to go back to is that build versus buy and the trade-offs you make there, whether you're working with startups, what you build internally. You mentioned data and some of the other things that might push you more towards the build mentality. How do you make those, how do you think about those trade-offs and ultimately make the decision?
It's a bit hard because, when you buy, you get speed, you get the ability to have something that works really well. Then the problem is you don't have the long-term benefits, meaning that you end up paying a license either per seat or either per interaction or per transaction or per call, per query. And so, the cost grows with you. And so, it turns out like it keeps eating your margin, and, we're already in a very constrained industry in terms of margin. And so, it has some pros because you get fast, but then you have to align as well in the business model. If the business model doesn't align, then you revert to build, right? So, and that's an interesting conversation when you speak with startups. I was a startup founder for my entire career up until Foundever. And so you always want to obviously charge, a license SaaS fee that is either per month, per seat, or per query. And the problem when you apply to the scale of a company like Foundever, right? Let's say, our solution costs $20 per seat. Yes, but times 170,000, that's $3.5 million a month. That's 40 million a year. 40 million a year is a big chunk of the company profit. So, you for 40 million a year, you can do a lot of things if you hire developers or if you partner with companies to build solutions. So, you have to sometimes be a bit transparent and say, we cannot have a per seat pricing. It needs to be something that is like an enterprise agreement with a fixed monthly fee and maybe just a reward fee because, startups want the upside of being able to grow a little bit, which I totally understand. But the per seat pricing doesn't work super, super well for the BPO players.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, protecting your margins is your business at the end of the day. But it's funny that tying price to value is such a crucial thing for startups to do well so that they can grow with the business, as you said. But in your case, that value shifts very differently when you're operating at that scale. Moving maybe more into some of the use cases, like you mentioned, kind of agent assist, agent co-pilot as being a big one that you're working on. What are some of the other big opportunities that you're seeing with Gen AI as applied to Foundever and CX experience?
One that we see obviously is automated translation. So being able to do everything that relates to voice, accent reducers. So you're able to do great support, but from cheaper locations, right? So lower tier locations where the agents are cheaper. So you're able to provide very good experience, but from a location that is very cost effective for the company. So this is one area. The other area as well is tied to this voice part is the translation. So how are you able to support? In some locations, it's impossible to find customer service agents. Right? So in the Nordics or in Germany, there's just not a lot of people that want to do this job anymore. Right? The countries are not mature enough, and the job market is a bit saturated. So it's impossible to find those resources. So now the speech to text, text to speech, and translation capabilities, the latency have reduced enough so that even when you put the three of them one after the other, you have a fairly acceptable latency. And so we're trying to tackle that. How do you provide great customer service in German or Danish, but from South America or from Philippines or from India, where the experience is good both for the agent and for the customer, and therefore the cost is attractive as well for the company. So everything that is related to voice, like there's a lot of things that are happening. Then we're also looking at improving our own productivity. So, coaching, onboarding of agents, basically coaching and training the agents. Basically, this is an area where, for some types of activities, coaching and training an agent can take up to 8 weeks when they are being hired. So those are 8 weeks when this person is on the payroll of Foundever, but it's not yet productive to be able to absorb volumes for the client. And when they start, they make a lot of mistakes, so it creates frustrations, churn for the company, etc. So it's a very challenging aspect, and so there's a lot of applications of GenAI. How do you reduce that uncertainty? How do you reduce that period? How do you make sure the person assimilates the right thing? So there's a lot of things. Coaching as well, right? You want to provide constant feedback. GenAI can do that by analyzing transcripts and being able to flag areas of improvements automatically. So that's another area where we're doing a lot. So say like voice, automated agents, so chatbots and voice bots, co-pilots, agent assists, and then coaching and onboarding.
There's a lot there that you can play with. I think, how do you see the scale, or I guess the sliding scale that's going to be happening from, how much human intervention is required? I think the classic thing in CX is that there's always the long tail of customer queries, right? You might be able to automate 80% of things, but then, you're in the space of those contact centers, like that long tail of more complex queries. Is that shifting? And how do you see these use cases evolving over the next few years?
There's always going to be a need for a human in customer service. That's undeniable. Then the question becomes, how many, right? Do you need 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, right? So it's a bit hard to predict how fast and how much the shift will happen. I guess it varies also on locations, on languages, on industries, right? Depending on the type of activity, you can probably automate 99%, and some it would be very hard to automate just because of the nature of the business, right? If it involves money or medical topics, people want to have the confirmation, double check that everything is super well handled by a human. But then we'll be using AI to enhance agents to make sure they're super productive, etc. So ultimately, the costs will go down, but at the same time, the margins will improve a bit, right? So it's also very good for everybody, because the companies, they're going to pay a bit less. The contact center companies, they're going to make a bit more margin. The agent is going to have a better experience. They're going to be more productive, and they're going to be able to grow faster into other roles, right? We have a lot of, I was very surprised by this after joining Foundever. There's a lot of people that are very high in the company in terms of responsibility, and they started as an agent. They started as an agent, then they were promoted to team lead, then to floor lead when they handle a whole floor, and then site director or client director. And then, they went either into operations or continuous improvements. And over the course of 5, 10, 15 years, like they became executives in the company because they know that business so well, they know the clients so well. So it's actually, I found it to be a very interesting business because everybody can do that job. There's a lot of people that can do that job depending on the language skills. And then they can evolve. And I think AI is just going to make that whole process much better for them also. Is it better to have a farm now or 100 years ago? Now with all the tools, etc., it's probably less strain on the body, and it's more effective, and it's a more manageable job, and people live longer with less injuries, etc. So I think it's a little bit the same approach, right? Overall, quite exciting.
Yeah, it is an exciting time. You touched on the level of human intervention required in different industries like medical. Are you seeing a reluctance on the part of some of your clients to embrace some of the technologies that you're deploying, or how do you package that for different industries and kind of the types of clients you serve?
My impression is more the other way around. I see more industries that are super keen to roll out any form of AI versus industries that are reluctant. I think like there aren't any industries that are thinking that's not for us, etc. Like all sectors think there are some great use cases, there are some efficiencies to add, etc. But what I see more is like more, for example, e-commerce, right? It's like it's companies are ready to do a lot of things, right? Really put 100% of their customer service on chat, 0% on phone, or like put 100% of the customer through a bot first, no matter if the bot provides a good experience 100% of the time, etc. Or do automated translation for chat for agents, although automated translation sometimes is you're going to see some funky conversations. So, like I'm very sometimes impressed by the courage of those e-commerce brands that are ready to move really fast into that and make that change proactively. But yeah, on the other side, I haven't felt like some sectors are reluctant. All of them are really keen to try. Some a little bit more than others.
Yeah, that's certainly what we're seeing as well. There's a massive hunger right now with there's so much hype around AI that there's a lot of enterprises that have a mandate, like some strategic priority to bring on these use cases, but they're also faltering a little bit at times to figure out what is the ideal use case and, going around with a hammer in search of a nail rather than building out from some of the things that you're doing, which is focusing on the end user. What is the actual problem that you're trying to solve? I think there's a lot of challenges as organizations, particularly large organizations, try to harness, the full benefits of integrating AI into their operations. How do you think about those challenges? What are some that you're seeing at Foundever?
Some that I've found is basic integration capability. So, you would think that companies now have embraced the simple notion of exposing APIs of their services or their database or their CRM to their partners. But a lot of companies still haven't tackled that, probably for digital transformation, legacy systems, fear of cyber attacks and security breach, right? Because that's also a thing when you open up those APIs and you start to grant tokens to companies, etc. You need to have the ability to secure all of this. What I'm most surprised of constantly is this inability to open up to an established partner and to be able to truly share data and connect services together, etc. That does not exist in the startup space. Right? In the startup space, you constantly logins with the Googles and etc. You share tokens, you connect systems together with the Zapiers and all those solutions. So you're very open with your data, and there are security breach, but not necessarily as much as the enterprise corporate space. So I'm very surprised by that. It's like I think we should. It's funny because we talk about digital transformation now for a decade or probably two, and it's still not there for most of companies.
Yeah, security always a big one for the large enterprises. You can talk about APIs, and then when you think about some of the concerns around dumping their data into large language models and other foundation models, like things like that, there's going to be a lot that AI is touching. You mentioned another thing earlier I want to come back to, which is the translation element, and sometimes like the ability to move jobs into other locations while they're still serving certain markets. Obviously, AI is raising a lot of concerns about job displacement. I think CX, contact centers, is at the very forefront of that kind of thing. How does Foundever approach that?
I believe that there are industries that will be even more affected than contact center and CX, right? Because if you think about it, like a very good bot that use speech to text, text to speech, multiple LLMs to be able to do RAG, retrieve the content and process. You want large models to be able to process complex questions or handle very long and challenging dialogues. It turns out that with the 80% gross margin that those technology companies apply, you end up with a cost per conversation of about 25, 30, 35 cents per those automated conversations. And an agent in the Philippines, fully trained senior agent that is like a real human agent, and in the Philippines or in India, is going to be around that same range. It's going to be in between 30 and 60 cents per transaction, so per conversations or per call. The markup is around 2x, right? Like if you deploy at mass scale, there's a 50% overall savings to grab for companies, which is pretty big. But then I think about like the consulting industry. In the past, if you wanted to have a market research about a study or a country or an industry, you had to hire those consultants that charge you, between $1,000 and $5,000 a day. So, very expensive. And now what you can do is you just take a smart person inside your company that graduated from a decent business school, and you equip them with the best Gen AI tools, and you're able then to make probably the similar outcomes, right? You're able to search and retrieve all the right information, make those super understandable and super easy to understand, and then deliver that same report. Here, the difference of price is 1,000x, right? You with the consultants, they cost you 200, 300, 500 grand as a company. That person internally, who's going to do probably the same outcome at the end, or the same conclusions, equipped with the right tools, is going to cost you only a few grand of salaries plus all those licenses. So I think like there are industries probably will be even more disrupted by these technologies. Now, if we talk about job displacements, yes, it's gonna have a lot of effects. Like I think countries that are maybe overregulated or have too complex labor laws, they're gonna see that those people end up losing jobs instead of saving them. So the very rule that governments came up with turns out to be this thing that probably is gonna create a lot of job displacement, right? Whereas in other countries where labor laws are really flexible, people are really keen to work, are available to change companies, etc. They're gonna keep seeing a lot of growth, and they're gonna keep seeing a lot of opportunities for their markets. But overall, I don't think there's going to be a lot of job destructions, because the jobs that we lose here, we put them there, and so there's never ever in the history of time an invention that truly decreased the number of jobs that were created in the world, right? It just keep growing.
I agree. I think it will just shift the work that we do. And I agree completely with your assessment that what we typically think of as the knowledge worker, the one untouched by technology, is going to be the most touched in many situations by what's happening in the market right now. You're 6-7 months into the job. What advice do you have for other aspiring chief AI officers?
I guess embrace both worlds. And when I mean both worlds, and I mean the technical and the business world, right? We tend to, the way academic trainings are done, etc. You study marketing, you're going to be doing only marketing, and your role is to become chief marketing officer in X number of years or something like this. Turns out and same thing, like if you go to an engineering school and you learn software engineering or stuff, or you learn by yourself, you end up being a software engineer, tech lead, etc., and eventually a CTO, head of engineering, or VP of engineering. And I feel like chief AI is a bit in between. So you need to understand the business constraints, the business tactics, the strategy, the roles, the priorities of the company. And then at the same time, you need to understand how to build products, how those model works, what are the dynamics between the different players, what are the pros of going one way or another way for a given solution. So you need to have fairly deep technical understanding and expertise. So I think that's maybe the missing part for some of those people, is like they've embraced a bit too much one side. They need to also look on the other to be able to access this kind of role, because it's necessary to be able to spend half of the day talking with engineers, developers, tech startups, and then the other half of the day talking with clients and executives and marketing and sales and solutions teams. So it's that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, for a technology that will touch pretty much everything in the organization, having a broad set of skills is going to be an important one if you're overseeing its deployment. I mean, that was advice on a personal level. What advice would you give organizations that are trying to integrate AI into their operations?
Give a lot of room to do things, because AI touch so much that you don't want it to be just a small team on the side that do their products, like they're the geeks that are building something really cool. You want to involve a lot of people, so do workshops, webinars, trainings, and certifications internally. Massively embrace those big initiatives that are company-wide to bring as many people as possible on board, because that's going to ease the whole process when you start to roll out solutions or repackage your offering with AI.
Yeah, I've spoken to the few AI officers so far that have really mentioned that to me as well, that training and education is key to a successful rollout. Looking ahead, we can end looking towards the future, how do you see AI evolving, and do you feel Foundever is ready for it?
We've reached already a very interesting plateau of, productivity and capability. It's going to keep growing, but I think the next big leap is a few years ahead. So some people call it AGI, etc. I think, but anyway, it looks really exciting, and overall, it's going to make people and companies more productive, and I think it's for the best either way. If we talk about Foundever, I think, yes, I have not yet seen a company that is so ready to transform with this technology. And when I mean a company that has 30 years behind them of not being a tech company and not being an AI company at all, and now really, really willing to be transforming with these new technologies. So I think just that will and that energy will prevail.
Yeah, that's a very optimistic outlook. That's a great one to have. Guillaume, this has been a lot of fun. That's all we have time for today. But if our listeners want to follow your work, learn a bit more about what you're doing, where should they go?
I guess add me on LinkedIn. I'm not very big on blogging or social or these things, but I usually post the really interesting things on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, yeah, you heard him. That's Guillaume Laporte from Foundever. Follow him on LinkedIn or connect with him if you listen to the episode and want to send him a note. Please do that, and me as well. It's always nice to hear from people that are listening. Guillaume, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ben.